to movie adaptations have been known to make changes book lovers criticize left and right. Movies aren't able to contain every scene from a book. The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan is a particularly criticized film because of how many changes it made from the source material. I was one of the many people who complained about this adaptation, but recently I wondered how much of it was actually changed and went back to see. I'm Bridget Barnsley, and this is the first episode of Diving Deep into Percy Jackson adaptations. This episode will be about how much the Lightning Thief movie actually diverged from the book. Sit back and grab a snack because this is going to be a long video. I have 11 pages of notes. I give the movie 3 categories that elements could fall into: things they got right, things they changed, and things they left out completely. By doing this, I hope to find the percentage of changes the movie made from the book to see if our criticisms are actually valid. The first category we are going to discuss is things they got right. The gods have a huge form that they can change to become regular-sized humans. The gods meet at the top of the Empire State Building. That is their central location in the book. Zeus is wearing some type of suit, and that is fitting because in the book we see him wearing a pinstripe suit. Percy has to return the Master Bolt to Zeus by the summer solstice, or there will be a war. Zeus explodes the door to the Empire State Building. He's a drama queen in the book, so I'll take it. Percy lives in New York. Percy attends Yancey Academy. Percy has dyslexia, which is shown well with the letters floating across the blackboard. Percy has ADHD. Gabe is a jerk of a husband and expects Sally to do everything for him. Also, he smells terrible. We don't know why Sally stays with him. The class takes a trip to the museum to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. Mr. Brunner is a middle-aged man in a wheelchair with a scruffy beard. They explain in the museum how Kronos was cut up by his sons and the existence of the Greek gods. Mrs. Dawes asks where it is and transforms into a fury. Mr. Brunner wheels in while Percy is being attacked. Mr. Brunner gives Percy the pen. Percy and Grover head back to Percy's house to explain what happened to Percy's mom. Gabe plays poker with his buddies and sits around all day. They kept the donkey-goat joke from the books where Percy calls Grover half donkey and then Grover's offended. The Minotaur smells Gabe's car and throws it. Sally dissolves into golden light. Percy uses the Minotaur horn to kill the Minotaur. Percy wakes up in the infirmary and Grover is there with him. Grover isn't a full-blown protector yet. Percy learns he's a demigod. Gabe's foul odor masked Percy's smell from monsters. They play capture the flag and Percy is with the Hermes cabin. While Jake Abel, who plays Luke, is 23 when he's filming this movie, he does look like he could be 19. Percy's attacked by children of Ares during capture the flag. Percy goes into the water and unknowingly heals himself and gains his strength back. Annabeth doesn't like Percy because of their parents. There's the chance that Percy's mom is still alive in the underworld. Annabeth and Grover insist on going on the trip with Percy. Annabeth really wants to go on a quest because she's been training to go on one for years. Luke gives Percy his flying shoes to wear during the quest. They take the Greyhound bus. Auntie Em's is filled with a bunch of statues. This statue looks like Grover's Uncle Ferdinand. Medusa is a lonely woman who keeps making her statues. Medusa tells her tale about her boyfriend and being mad at Annabeth's mother. Medusa has snakes for hair and can transform people to stone with a look. Medusa used to date Percy's dad. Percy chops off Medusa's head. Medusa's eyes still work, dead or alive. Poseidon and Athena hate each other. Percy's on the news. Gabe gives fake testimony and tells many lies about Percy, and now Percy's a fugitive. Grover eats soda cans. They eat in a diner. The weather around the world is going crazy because the gods are fighting. The trio goes to the Lotus Hotel and Casino when in Las Vegas, and the sign logo looks so good. The Lotus Hotel and Casino looks pretty good from the inside as well. Like the casino has everything you could want to eat, tons of games, water slides, and rides all over. A random butler gives them cards to stay at the hotel. Grover bleats like a goat while at the hotel. They forget their purpose while being at the hotel and decide to stay and have fun. Percy talks to a guy at a machine who says the year is 1971. Percy begs Annabeth and Grover to drag them out of the Lotus Hotel and Casino and go back on their quest. They come out of the Lotus Hotel and Casino and it has been 5 days, so they only have 1 day left to complete their quest. The underworld is in Hollywood. Charon gets bribed using drachmas. The river Styx is filled with the lost hopes and dreams of all the people who had traveled down it before. Hades was banished to the underworld by his brothers. Hades wants the lightning bolt in exchange for Percy's mother. They only have 3 pearls, so one of them has to stay. Percy wasn't supposed to make it out alive from the underworld. Luke is the one who stole the lightning bolt. Annabeth uses a dagger. Luke wants their generation of demigods to take over the world. Mount Olympus is a beautiful city on a mountain hovering over New York City. The gods are huge in their throne room. Zeus gets his lightning bolt back. Percy's other person comes back from the underworld. Percy briefly talks to his dad and his dad is proud of him. Percy went on the quest to save his mom. Grover got an advanced position because he went on the quest and succeeded. Sally gets Gabe to look at Medusa and freezes him into a statue. According to my calculations, the film got 75 things right. Now we are going to move on to the next category, things they changed. The film starts with Poseidon coming out of the water. He's huge and dressed in typical Greek armor, which we never see the gods wearing in the book because they have become modernized. When he does change into human clothes, he changes into a sweatshirt, which is not right because Poseidon should be wearing a Hawaiian shirt and khaki pants. Zeus accuses Poseidon's son of stealing the lightning bolt in the first scene, which implies that he knows about the existence of Percy, but in the books no one knows Percy exists until Poseidon claims him at camp, which gives Zeus more of a reason to blame Poseidon at that point. Zeus also tells Poseidon that Percy needs to give the bolt back to him, as if Poseidon is going to tell Percy himself to get the lightning bolt when they have never talked. Percy is supposed to be 12 in this book and just finishing up 6th grade. This is especially important to the plot later in the books because the Great Prophecy has to do with one of the children of the Big Three turning 16. Instead, Logan Lerman, who plays Percy, is 18 at the time of the film's release. Annabeth is also supposed to be 12, and Alexander Daddario, who plays Annabeth, is 24. Percy seems to know that he can stay underwater for an abnormal amount of time based on him sitting on the floor of the pool at the beginning of the movie, but he isn't supposed to have any clue that he has any powers. He says he stays underwater for 7 minutes and they have no clue that he's the son of Poseidon. Are you kidding me? It seems like Percy's going to high school, which, considering he should be finishing up 6th grade, is not right. Mrs. Dodds is an English teacher, but in the book she's a pre-algebra teacher. A fairly obvious change because the title of the first chapter of the book is I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher. Percy goes home every day after school, but in the books Yancey Academy is a boarding school, so he doesn't go home until the end of the year when he has already not been invited back. Gabe threatens Percy when he gets home and tells Percy to show him some respect because it's Gabe's house. Gabe can't hold a job in the film, but in the books he manages electronics at Mega Mart and immediately spends all his money on beer and poker. They don't know how he keeps the job, but he does. Poseidon stares at Percy and can speak into his mind. He might be able to do that in the book, but he doesn't in book 1. Percy has his headphones in while at the museum and isn't listening to anything Mr. Brunner is saying, while in the books he's trying very hard to concentrate and struggles to listen over the sound of Nancy Bobofit talking in the background. Mr. Brunner asks Percy what the offspring of a human and a god is, but in the book, Percy has to explain the Chronos myth. Percy can suddenly read the ancient Greek on the statue, but in the books he has to spend weeks learning with Annabeth. Mrs. Dodds randomly pulls Percy away from the group. Mrs. Dodds tells Percy to give her the lightning bolt, but in the book she never specifies what she's looking for. She just asks for it because she thinks Percy has Hades' Helm of Darkness and is looking for that, even though it isn't revealed until the end. Grover walks in on the fight with Mr. Brunner. Mrs. Dodds releases Percy and flies out the window instead of Percy fighting her with his sword and turning her to dust. Grover and Mr. Brunner are still there after the attack and explain that a Fury attacked him. Mr. Brunner gives Percy the pen after the attack and tells him it's a powerful weapon, instead of letting Percy use it to fight Mrs. Dodds and then take it back after the attack. The people around Percy at school never forget about Mrs. Dodds, so he thinks he's crazy. He's automatically in this new world. Grover is very confident about everything he's doing, but in the books he's very unsure of himself because he doesn't want to mess up. Grover comes to Percy's house where Gabe is. Gabe attacks Percy and Grover punches Gabe with his crutches to prove he's protecting Percy. The Minotaur comes from a field of cows instead of finding them when they're in Montauk and following them all the way to camp. It's also smart enough to throw a cow in front of the car to stop it instead of the car being hit by lightning. Grover just randomly starts taking his pants off. There's no other reason other than to start trouble the moment they're trying to get out of the car. Grover isn't passed out on the way to camp from the road, instead he's leading them. There are a bunch of torches and a big sign saying Camp Half-Blood at the entrance to camp because we need to be super obvious about a supposedly invisible camp, right? Sally is unaware that she isn't allowed into the camp, but in the book she knows Percy is the only one who can go and stays back to fight the Minotaur and distract him so that they have time to get away. Sally doesn't teach Percy the trick of getting the Minotaur to run past you because it can only go so fast in one direction and can't change directions that easily. Grover tells Percy to use his pen and just stands there while he fights. Percy also still has the pen, which he's not supposed to. He's supposed to just be fighting with his own strength. The horn of the Minotaur comes off when it's stuck in a random tree trunk instead of Percy snapping it off. Percy passes out when defeating the Minotaur instead of dragging Grover over the camp line and passing out there. Grover says he tried, but he was literally just standing there. Grover doesn't have his horns yet because he's not a full-blown protector. In the book, they just grow in normally, not when he does some good deed, and he's actually striving to get his searcher's license so that he can search for the missing god of the wild Pan. They're in the middle of the forest instead of in an open field. Grover and Percy walk straight through the archery range. The camp is all squished together, so everything is in one place instead of there being different locations for everything, like in the book. Grover explains the world instead of Chiron and Annabeth. Annabeth isn't blonde. Percy randomly sees Annabeth and feels connected to her. She doesn't help in his recovery at all. There's a bunch of centaurs instead of just Chiron. He sees Chiron, his half centaur, out of nowhere instead of seeing him come out of his wheelchair. Grover just goes to chill with the daughters of Aphrodite because they all want him and he's not awkward at all. They know he's the son of Poseidon from the beginning. Chiron wants to take Percy to Olympus to convince Zeus of his innocence. Annabeth is on the opposite team from Percy in Capture the Flag. Percy never gets assigned the position in Capture the Flag, like say guarding the border river. Instead he just runs around with Luke. Percy just randomly runs through the river and sees the flag and has to fight Annabeth. You're not supposed to cut people. Her dessert privileges should be gone and no one is talking about this. Everyone just stands around watching them instead of going for the flag of the other team. The water makes Percy's clothes wet, but they should be dry unless he wills them to be wet. Annabeth is supposed to fight with a knife. They just let Percy go get the flag, which doesn't change color when he lifts it. Luke doesn't get the flag. Grover keeps hitting on the nymphs. Hades comes out of the fire looking like a demon and throwing fire all around camp and tells Percy to bring him the bolt for his mother. For some reason, Chiron doesn't want to send Percy on a quest to find the bolt. They all know Hades doesn't have the bolt because he just admitted wanting it. Percy's cabin is fully open and doesn't seem to have any walls and isn't a little cabin by the water. Percy is running away to find his mom instead of getting sent on a quest for the lightning bolt. Percy continually says he doesn't need Annabeth and Grover's help, but Book Percy knows he's dumb and needs all the help he can get. Luke, from the Hermes cabin, just casually has his own room alone with a TV. But in the book, the Hermes cabin is super overcrowded and there are people sleeping all over the floor because they don't have enough beds for everyone, and it's just one big room. Luke says he's never met his dad, but in the book he met his dad once after he did his quest. Luke broke into his dad's house and stole the shoes instead of his dad giving them to him as a gift. Luke gives the trio a map to Persephone's pearls that provide a quick escape from the underworld instead of being gifted the pearls from Poseidon through an errand. The first stop to get the pearls is Auntie M's instead of randomly stumbling across it when they blow up the bus. Luke also gives the trio his favorite shield. Instead of the bus blowing up, they casually get off it. Auntie M's has rats in their freezer instead of having actually good food for the demigods to eat. A random lady asks Annabeth for help and gets frozen attached to her. They all split up and look around because they're looking for the stone. Auntie M doesn't ask the trio for a photo for her collection. Percy's the one to come up with looking at her reflection. Percy has a phone, which he's not supposed to have because it's like sending up a flare to the monsters where he is. Medusa is trying to find them and doesn't know they're there instead of knowing and trying to freeze them all in one spot. Medusa asks for the lightning bolt because she says Percy has it. Percy's eyes are blue instead of green. Annabeth blindly drives a random truck through the statue garden to hit Medusa and get her down, instead of Grover using the winged shoes to hit her blindly from the sky. They decide to take Medusa's head with them instead of Percy sending it to Mount Olympus because he's impertinent. They go to the Parthenon in Nashville for the second pearl. Grover falls asleep driving, which they never do any driving in the book because they're actually children, and they stop for the night. Usually in the book they sleep on the train or something, so they're constantly moving. Percy can heal other people with his water powers, when in the book he can just heal himself, and that's subconsciously. Movie Annabeth has never met her mom, but book Annabeth had her mom give her the Yankees cap that makes her invisible, as a magical object to help her, which she doesn't have in the movie. Zeus made a decree that the gods can't talk to their mortal offspring. Apparently the gods can speak to their children in their minds in times of trouble to give them advice. A lady sees they have Medusa's head and freaks out, so they have to leave for added comedic effect. They see the statue of Athena in the Parthenon and they have to get the pearl off the crown in her head, so they have to wait until it closes to get it. The trio come out to get the pearl by Percy using Luke's flying shoes, which he's not supposed to use because he can't go in the air because of Zeus. Annabeth randomly has a tranquilizer bow and arrow to knock out the guards so they can put them in a pile. You have to run to use the shoes instead of just saying Maya. They can just video call other demigods and it doesn't send up a trace. The janitors tell the trio to give them the lightning bolt and then merge and turn into the Hydra, which isn't shown in the first book at all. But also, side note, why would a Hydra need a lightning bolt? Like, how is the Hydra gonna use that? Percy, for some reason, doesn't know that if you cut off the head of a Hydra, 2 more grow back. Even though it's a very common myth he should have learned from Mr. Brunner. Grover also doesn't seem to know this for some reason, and you would really expect him to know this since he's supposed to be a protector. Annabeth uses a bow and arrow a lot instead of her knife. Percy uses his powers to make a wall of water to block the Hydra from him while he's getting the pearl. Grover uses Medusa's head to freeze the Hydra and stop the fire, apparently. Again, they're driving places, which shouldn't be possible because they're 12 and they need to hitch all their rides. That's one of the big parts of the book, is that they can't find a ride to get there. Waitresses at the Lotus Hotel and Casino give the trio lotus flowers as their signature dish, and they're drugged into a haze that makes them forget their purpose there. Grover stops wearing his pants while in the casino so everyone can see he's part goat. Poseidon has to speak to Percy to tell him to not eat the flower because it's dulling his senses to make him realize what's happening, instead of Percy realizing on his own when he talks to a random person, which he does talk to a person, but what wakes him up is his dad's voice. There's a big fight to not let the trio leave the hotel, but in the book, the Lotus Eaters are sad to see them go, but let them leave. They steal a car and drive through the entrance to get out. Grover's driving and says he can get them to Hollywood in 4 hours instead of them hopping in a taxi and using the Infinity car from the hotel to pay for the trip. The entrance to the underworld is behind the Hollywood sign instead of in a record company. The entrance to the underworld is in a cavern instead of an interminable waiting room, and it's empty instead of being filled with tons of waiting souls. Charon isn't wearing an Italian suit, but typical robes. Charon burns the mortal money, which he probably still could have used, to buy the Italian suits. They're the only ones on the boat to the underworld. All lives end in suffering and tragedy. There's no Fields of Asphodel, or Elysium, or Isle of the Blessed, because it's basically hell and not the real underworld. Hellhounds try to attack them when they get in the palace. Persephone is in the palace even though it's summertime, aka her time to spend on the top world with her mom, which should have been obvious because the deadline is the summer solstice, which is when she moves. Persephone calls it hell, not the underworld, and doesn't like living there. But in the book, we don't know how she feels because she's not there. Hades is human-sized and doesn't look godlike at all, and the trio are very surprised that he looks like a regular person, when in the book, he looks extremely godlike and radiates power. Hades transforms himself into a fire demon person when asking what they expect him to look like. The lightning bolt is in the shield that Luke gave Percy instead of in the backpack from Ares, which means they knew immediately that Luke was the one who stole the lightning bolt instead of knowing what god was behind it but not what demigod. There's just a pit of souls waiting for people to be fed to it. Hades doesn't keep his promise that if he gets the lightning bolt, he'll let them go. But in the book, he's a very honorable god and follows his promises by giving Percy back his mother after he gets his helm back. Persephone steals the bolt from Hades and electrocutes him, and gets the Hellhounds to back off and then lets them go. She says she only likes her time away, but this should be her time away because it's summertime. Persephone is the one to give them the bolt back. Percy says he achieved his quest, but he didn't get a quest in the movie. Grover says he'll stay in the underworld because only 3 of them can go, and it implies that he gets with Persephone while he stays there so Sally can go back using the pearl. The pearl transports them all the way to Olympus instead of just above ground, so they have to use a plane. Luke and Percy have a huge fight scene using the lightning bolt, a nuclear-sized war weapon, and they do this while flying above New York City in the Hermes shoes, even though Luke should only have 1 pair of these shoes and it should be in Tartarus at this point. Luke is the one fighting Percy instead of Ares. Percy pulls water from many different water towers around New York City and gathers it around him and Luke, and smashes Luke with it to show that he is truly the son of Poseidon because Luke doubted him. Percy forms a trident out of water and throws it at Luke so that Luke flies into the river, and Percy says he's the son of Poseidon. Sally knows automatically how to get to Olympus by pushing a bunch of buttons, even though she's not allowed to go there. The 12 main gods are in the throne room arguing in battle armor, instead of it just being Zeus in a pinstripe suit and Poseidon in a Hawaiian shirt and khakis, sitting in the throne room waiting for Percy to give the bolt back. In the book, Percy told Annabeth and Grover to go back to camp to tell Chiron what happened while he went to go give the lightning bolt back on his own. But in the movie, Annabeth is there. Percy tells how Luke stole the lightning bolt, but in the book they just know that Ares was involved and they don't know what demigod helped at that point. Annabeth and Athena have a moment where Athena says how proud she is of Annabeth. Zeus is the one to give Grover back instead of Hades keeping his promise to give Sally back after he gets his helm back. In the movie, Percy was 7 months old when Poseidon left, but in the book, Poseidon left before Percy was even born, though he did remember some sense of Poseidon visiting him when he was a baby. Poseidon was becoming human by being with Sally and Percy, and he's the reason Zeus made the law about contact with their children. Basically, he wasn't the same kind of distant father figure that he was in the book. Sally kicks Gabe out. Sally drops Percy at camp and says that's where he belongs, as if that's where he's going to stay year-round instead of going home after the summer is over. In the movie, Grover's horns start to come in because he completed his quest and now he's a senior protector, but in the book, Grover gets his searcher's license. Percy left camp and disobeyed Chiron in the movie, but in the book, Chiron is the one who sent Percy on his quest and told Percy that he needed to go. Percy goes to fight Annabeth on the training ground instead of Luke. The film changed 141 things according to my statistics. So let's dive into the final category, things they forgot, or elements of the book they disregarded completely. Nancy Bobofit bullies Percy and Grover, and she is the reason Mrs. Dodds pulls Percy away, because he pushed her in a fountain. Percy and Grover taking their bus trip into the city after the school year ends and the bus breaking down, so they can see the fates cut the cord to imply some kind of death. Sally and Percy's fun trip to Montauk after school ends because she doesn't know that he was attacked by a Fury. And that's where Grover finds them in the book. Blue food being important? Not in this movie. There is no hill to get to Camp Half-Blood, it's just some more flat ground. There is no tree marking the entrance to Camp Half-Blood at the top of this non-existent hill. There is no strawberry field which Dionysus can control with his powers. Ambrosia and nectar don't seem to exist in this world to help demigods heal. Argus, the man with hundreds of eyes all over his body, doesn't watch over Percy as he heals or drive the kids into the Greyhound station so they can get a ride because they run off on their own. Mr. D doesn't exist and help Chiron run the camp. Grover doesn't have the purpose of looking for Pan, the long-lost god of the wild that satyrs have looked up to and have been searching for thousands of years. Clarice in all her camo glory doesn't exist to get mad at Percy and push his head in the toilet, get embarrassed, and go after him during Capture the Flag. There is no reference to the fact that there are 12 main cabins in a U formation somewhere in the camp, just that Percy got his own cabin. The seaweed brain, wise girl nicknames Percy and Annabeth have for each other do not appear anywhere in this film. There is no fire pit with a 9-year-old girl attending to it, which is very important because it's Hestia, the goddess of the hearth. There's no scene where a hellhound attacks Percy, proving that he's the son of Poseidon because they all already know that his father is Poseidon. There's also no need to search for what he's talented at. Along the same lines, there are no real examples of Percy being trained with his sword. In the book, it's a way of showing that he's better after dumping water on himself because then he's actually able to beat Luke. But it's also a fun way to show how Percy gets to train, and the film skips over all of that. They never really explain that the big three, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, can't have kids, and that's why he's such a big deal. There's no mention of the fact that Poseidon has tried to dethrone Zeus in the past, and that's why Zeus is so worried this time. The prophecy that predicts what's going to happen on their quest. Oracle? Who is she? There's no mention of if Riptide can come back to Percy's pocket automatically. The trio are not attacked by demon triplet math teachers, aka the Furies, on their bus ride, which leads to the bus blowing up in the book. Percy's dreams of a bottomless pit with something evil inside are forgotten, because why would you want to set up for a greater overarching plot? Grover's abilities, like being able to sense emotion and talking to animals, like when he talked to the poodle to get them train tickets, don't exist in the movie. The whole St. Louis Gateway Arch scene, where they go to the top and then Percy stays behind because the elevator is full. He waits with a lady in a chihuahua and it turns out to be Echidna and a chimera, who attack him and send him jumping out of the arch and into the pond below. Iris messaging using rainbows as a way to contact camp instead of using phones. Ares does not show up in the diner to give them his own mini quest to get his shield on the Tunnel of Love ride in the Waterland theme park, and subsequently help them hitch a ride on the back of a humane animal moving truck. In the book, this is where Percy realized that he can talk to the zebra because his dad created horses, and the trio eventually let the animals free in the middle of Las Vegas, which causes quite the commotion. Grover playing Reverse Hunter and Annabeth playing the architecture game while in the hotel, which really speaks to their characters in the book. Using a taxi to get them to LA from Las Vegas, and using the Lotus Cash Card as their money. The Santa Monica Pier, where a Nereid from Poseidon's court gives them 3 white pearls to help them get out of the underworld, and who is the same Nereid from the St. Louis Arch when Percy was in the water there and saw her. Procrustes the Stretcher and his over-hospitality to sell waterbeds that are exactly people's size. DOA Recording Studios is the cover for the underworld. Charon's personality? Hades' Helm of Darkness doesn't exist to be stolen in the film. Kronos doesn't exist to give Luke driving motivation and ideas of what to do, and to start the overarching plot of the whole series, so the film completely forgot 35 things from the book by my statistics. Obviously, movies change things. It's simply not possible to keep everything exactly the same in the transition from page to screen. But by my calculations, there were 75 things they got right, 141 things they changed, and 35 things they left out completely. Here's a pie chart breaking down all the elements of the movie, but if we're going to round for some final statistics, by my math, 30% of the movie was correct, while the other 70% was changed and forgotten. Do you think those statistics are enough for the movie to earn its place among the worst adaptations? Let me know in the comments down below. Like this video if you enjoyed hearing my detailed analysis of the movie. Every like is another adaptation being done correctly. Please subscribe to my channel for more detailed analysis. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for part 2. Bye!